Welcome to Today's Homeowner with Danny Lipford. Expert advice on improving your home from the pages of Today's Homeowner magazine and professional remodeler Danny Lipford.
Sooner or later, every homeowner does some degree of interior remodeling to their house, whether it's removing wallpaper, removing sections of the wall, or building new wall sections. This week's show, we'll talk with a homeowner that's doing all of these things and a lot more to this house, and the job superintendent who's managing this project and putting all the pieces together. As always, our Simple Solutions segment will give you those how-to tips for some of those simple projects around your house, and a little bit later in the show, our best new product of the week. Now, I'll bet before this show's over, we'll show you something you can use around your house. So stay with us here on Today's Homeowner. The kitchen is one of the few areas in the house not affected by the extensive interior renovation. Now, here to talk with us is our ambitious homeowner, Carol Manoli. Carol, how are you holding up?
Pretty good, Danny. Thank you.
Good. Well, now, what inspired you to purchase the house? I know there's a lot of work taking place here, but what was the key thing that made you want to buy this house?
Well, we had looked for a long time and had wanted a golf course lot, and just happened to stumble upon this lot and just decided to buy the house.
It is a beautiful lot.
Absolutely.
And access to the golf course is great. Well, we're real lucky that the kitchen was in such good shape, because kitchen remodeling can be one of the more expensive parts of any renovation, and basically it's in real good shape. Whoever did the renovation a few years ago put in some good cabinets here, and they used a good quality granite countertop, but there's still a few changes you want to make in here.
Absolutely. We were very, very pleased with the cupboards. We were pleased with the countertops. We did not like the mirrors behind there, which is something we're going to change out and either put in tile or paint that. The color in the kitchen we are going to change. Turquoise is not my color, and we plan on doing something neutral in here.
Okay. You know, the mirrors like that are never really a good idea because of the desilvering that can take place anytime you have this much moisture around here. Well, now, of course, there's things that you dislike about the house, particularly the interior, and that's what really is motivating a lot of the renovation. But take us through a few of the rooms, such as the foyer. What are some of the things you disliked about the original foyer?
Well, when you came into the foyer, the ceiling was low. You really didn't get a good view of the dining room or the living room because of the low ceiling there. So we decided to go ahead and extend the foyer and make a vaulted ceiling so that we could hang a nice large light fixture down, so that when you came into the house, you've got this grand feeling when you walked in and had beautiful views of both the living room and of the dining room.
Okay. Now, the dining room. You had a fairly unique dining room we started working with there. Tell us about that unique color scheme.
Well, it was purple, and it was probably the most purple that I have ever seen. And so we, of course, are going to choose a different color for that, but we also decided when we were going to extend the foyer that we would go ahead and make the dining room larger too.
Well, now that'll make a big difference when you enter into the foyer to look to the left and have that large dining room, the dining room table and the furniture in there. That'll be a good look just as you walk in the house.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, the living room, fairly large size, 25 feet by 32 feet, but still some changes needed to be made.
Absolutely. We were thrilled with it because of the size. We have a lot of furniture that we have to put in there, and we're more than happy with that. One of the walls had a large brick fireplace, which we needed to take down, and we're going to place some nice cupboards up there. The floor in there was a tile that was supposed to look like a marble, which we decided to pull up, and we're going to put in wood. We had 3 large beams, which made the ceiling look a lot lower than what it was, and we decided to take those, in fact, beams out.
Good, good. Now, the master suite, the master bedroom, bathroom, the bathroom had a renovation performed on it a few years ago, but still needed some changes in there.
Absolutely. We were, in fact, happy with the bath. We thought it was a good size. We just needed to change some of the fixtures from the chrome to the brass, and we decided to change the floor. It was just a regular white tile floor, and we decided to go up to the marble floor.
Yeah, and it had the small tiles too.
Absolutely,
we
the
don't
small
use those
8 by
very
8.
much. Yeah, that makes a difference there. Now upstairs, less renovation is being done upstairs, but a significant part of it is removing the wall as you go up the steps.
Right. When you would go up the stairs, you would feel like you were almost in a tunnel effect. And so we decided to take down the wall and put in a railing. And so now when you walk upstairs, not only do you get the light, but the feeling of it being nice and open.
Yeah, it's a lot more open, and also it'll be a great look when you're up on the second level looking down into this new expanded foyer.
Right.
Okay. Well, now you've done more remodeling in other houses, and you know how important the decisions, both in the design and in the selection of everything you have to do. You've done a great job in going out and making those decisions.
Absolutely. I think the first thing that you need to do once you decide to remodel a house is to make your selections. You need to do that as soon as possible, because that keeps the contractor on time, it keeps you on time. If for some reason there's got to be changes made, you can do it quickly, and things just seem to stay on schedule that way.
Now this is some great advice, and if you're thinking of entering into any kind of renovation or new home project, make sure that you spend some good quality time thinking about some of the selections, making those selections, and giving that information to the remodeler so that he can make his plans to move the project along. Well, I know you're anxious to get around and see some of the progress that's taking place, and there's a lot of things happening here, and I'll let you get to that. And stay with us, and when we come back, we'll check with Bob Karen, our job superintendent, about some of the progress that's being made. Stay with us.
Get ready to review your fix-it list as Danny and home repair pro Alan Lyle show you this week's simple solution.
You know, many of the projects that we feature here on Simple Solutions are preventative measures for your house. It's a good example of what Alan's working on now. He's preparing to re-caulk this bathtub. Alan, tell us a few tips about this.
Well, Danny, it's important to remember that grout has a tendency to let water seep through. And if that's the case, you can have some damage behind this. So what I'm doing is scraping down my verticals and horizontals. You can use either a utility knife or even a putty knife will do the job to make a groove in the grout, and also gets rid of all that loose stuff. You can see right there we've already got some holes in our tile. And I'm going to put some nice waterproof caulk in its place.
Okay, now about the caulking. Now I know almost everybody's familiar with a latex tub and tile caulk. It's very easy to use, no caulking gun necessary. But give us a tip about the preparation of the spout part of that.
Well, Danny, this does come out very easily. And if there's too much grout or caulking coming out, it can be very, very messy. So what you want to do is just cut a small opening, maybe no less than 1/8 of an inch in size. So what I'm going to do is come and cut this, and always at a 45, because it's really easier to apply that way. About here, and we'll cut away from us. And remember, you can always cut more, but you can't cut less off. All right, that's almost just right.
Okay.
Now then, when we're ready to apply it, what we want to do is push in, and just a little bit at a time. We're just going to start at our vertical. See how nicely that smooths in, Danny?
Yeah, that looks great. Now the next part though can be the messy part.
That's right, and that's actually cleaning it up. What you want to do, have handy either a wet cloth, sponge, or even just a bucket of water. I like to just keep my finger wet and let that run down, follow the side.
Great.
Doesn't that look good?
Good.
And you always wipe the excess off here, or come back and use that, come back up and fill in, and then just wipe it clean.
Great. Well, that's a good looking job, a good neat job, and a good preventative measure here on Simple Solutions. Now, this is quite a being here, Bob. I'm with Bob Karen, our job superintendent. And Bob, this was a pretty tough job getting this down from the ceiling. Homeowner expressed they wanted to get rid of them, but it was a pretty tough job.
Yeah, Danny, when we first got here, she mentioned she didn't like the beams, but we didn't exactly know what was in there. So we had to remove the sheetrock just to see exactly what it was.
Well, you would just assume with it running across a large room like this that the ceiling joist or floor joist from upstairs would tie into them or sit on top of them, therefore being load bearing, but really they were just for looks.
Yeah, something this large, you would figure it'd be holding up a room with such a large span like this. But we were just pretty lucky they were only decorative.
Well, now, how did you get this out of here? I know earlier in the day they were in the process of chiseling and cutting and everything else to get this last beam out. Kind of take us through that process.
Well, first thing we did was to try to remove some of the sheetrock off the beam just so it would come down freely and not hang up on the ceiling. And then we took a heavy post to hold up the beam before we started cutting on it to make sure it would be safe and that it wouldn't come down without us being prepared for it. Then we got a chainsaw and cut a chunk of the beam out so we would provide us access to the beam so we could cut it off the top of the plate.
And you really have to use a chainsaw because no other normal saw can cut through anything that big.
There's not many blades that are this big, so we had to use a chainsaw. Once we got a section of the beam cut out to where we would have access to it, we had to take a chisel and move the ceiling joists away to get more access to the notch that's sitting on the top plate. And after that, we used a reciprocating saw to finish the job and cut the beam clear of the wall.
Okay. Now, of course, the fellas had a section of this earlier that were, it was about 3 feet long, and said it weighed about 120 pounds. So a beam this long would be over 800 pounds. You don't just lift that down. How did that take place in terms of getting it down to this point?
Well, we were really concerned about safety because of all the weight, and we made sure the guys had all their safety gear on. But basically, it's a matter of just cutting it loose and getting out of the way and letting it drop.
Well, I was in the other part of the job when I heard this thing come down. I thought a truck had ran into the house. So that is a point of safety that you really have to be careful with. But what about getting it out of here?
Well, the only way to get it out right now is to just cut it in small pieces and just lift it out of here and get it in the dumpster. It's kind of a shame to ruin such a good piece of lumber, but there's no other way to get it out.
And with 800 or 900 pound beam, there's not much else you can do. Well, I know there's a lot of other things taking place on the job on the interior renovation. When we come back, we'll take a look at some more.
It's time to check out the Home Center for this week's best new product with Danny and today's Homeowner Magazine's editor-in-chief, Paul Spring.
Many of the trends in remodeling are just recycled ideas from the past. Glass blocks are a great example of that.
They sure are, Danny. Glass block we used a lot in the 1920s in this country. There's some beautiful buildings with it. And for the last 10 years, it's been very popular. I'm sure you see that in your business. This is an easy way to get a glass block window without building it step by step, one brick at a time. These are 8-inch glass blocks from Pittsburgh Corning. And this Lightwise window, as they call it, is a terrific way all at once to get a glass block installation. These are held in with silicone and they're surrounded by a vinyl frame, and that vinyl frame has an integral nailer on it so it installs just like a new window.
Now I understand it has different types of glass that are available for different privacy levels.
That's right. There are 3 different varieties and you can really still get your light, but in a bathroom situation, for instance, have all the privacy you need.
Okay, what about sizes, availability of different sizes?
There's good availability there. There are a couple of dozen sizes actually. Start at 16 inches square for a real tiny little highlight situation to something much larger in 4 feet by 4 feet.
Okay, always a question, how about cost?
Cost is very reasonable. It's $135 on the small end all the way up to about $465 for the biggest window.
Well, great, it's a good product. You know, if you like glass blocks but don't want to put up the hassle of a block mason coming in and laying these piece by piece, consider a unit like this. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Now, before this interior renovation started, you would not have been able to see me where I'm standing now, which is in the stairway, because there was a wall here that extended all the way to the ceiling. Now, it really gave you a very closed-in feeling when you were coming up the stairs. Now, by removing this wall, really opens it up and gives you the opportunity to look from the second story down into the extended foyer. Now, inevitably, when you're removing walls, you may run into a few surprises. This is the surprise we ran into here. It's a 3-inch cast iron pipe that's a vent stack that extends from the downstairs powder room up through the attic area. Now, the plumber was able to help us out considerably by reducing this to a 2-inch plastic pipe and extending it over and up through the wall here. Now, our drywall contractor will come in, patch this up, should be fine. Now, this gives me an opportunity at this point in the job to point out some great tips for you. You know, many people feel that you have to remove all of the wallpaper from a wall before you re-wallpaper or paint the wall. Well, it's always a good idea if it comes off fairly easy. In our case here, we're having some real problems. The first layer came off very easily. The second layer is really stuck to the wall and is causing a good bit of damage as we tried to remove it. What we're planning on doing is repainting these walls and leaving the wallpaper up. You can see Scott's in the process of applying some joint compound to the seam in the wallpaper that will hide that and feather it out well. Now once this is dry, we will be able to sand it down smooth and we're ready to apply our primer and our paint. Now if you're re-wallpapering, you need to size the wall well so that you can apply the paper. If you're painting, use a 3/4 inch nap roller when you're rolling the paint on. That'll give just a little bit of wall texture to hide any of the other imperfections. Now another thing you can do during this stage of the renovation is think about replacing any of the wall receptacles that may be old and dingy looking, like this one. It's got a little paint on it, and also many times you'll find where you're taking a lamp plug and plugging it in and out quite a bit, that'll actually wear it out and then make it very hard for the plug to stay in. Now this is electrical work, so you have to be very careful with it and make sure that anytime you're touching this, turn off all of the power coming into the house at your service panel outside. And you may consider having a master electrician do that work for you. It can make a big improvement in the room. You know, there's nothing more aggravating on a wood floor system to have the floor squeaking. Many times the squeaking is a result of friction between the wood to wood contact or the subfloor and the nails or screws that are holding it in. Well, we have a pretty bad problem here. You can see how it's making a good bit of noise, and how we'll correct this. This particular case, we actually have 2 layers of subflooring. In your house, you may only have 1, but we have a 1/4 inch plywood and a 3/4 inch plywood that's causing a lot of noise. Now what you have to do in order to correct this, we'll be using a 2 1/4 inch screw, very similar to a sheetrock type screw, and we'll be installing it down through the plywood into our floor joist. Now to find that floor joist, it's always a good trick to use a stud finder like this. It will indicate exactly where that stud is, or that floor joist. You're able to make a good mark on it. Then using a drill motor with a little Phillips head bit on it, there, that should take care of the squeak in this area, but while the floor covering's up, you may as well go ahead and do the whole floor. Use a chalk box to make it a little easier to find those floor joists after you've marked it on either end. Pop a line, then you're able to put the screw in every 6 to 8 inches to make sure you have no other squeaks. That way, when you're getting up in the middle of the night for that midnight snack, you can do it all by yourself. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Now for a bit of news from the great outdoors as Danny takes a look around the yard.
To most homeowners, the old-fashioned drop spreader still remains the most convenient way to spread lawn fertilizer. The concept of this tool is very simple. You have a lever that adjusts the settings on the rear of the hopper to adjust the flow of fertilizer into the yard. Then you walk across the yard spreading a 2-foot wide path. Now here's a few tips on how to use your drop spreader. First of all, check the label on the fertilizer package and adjust the spreader to the correct setting. Always fill your spreader off the line on a driveway or walkway. That way, if any spills happen, you won't burn up your grass, and you can sweep it up and put it right back in the spreader. Now fertilize the ends of your yard first and go back and forth the long way, but shut the spreader off at each end so that you don't spill excess as you turn. Also, have the spreader in motion before you open the hopper and turn it back off when you have to turn around a tree or any other obstacle in your yard. Another handy tip, mix some baking flour in your fertilizer. That'll help tell you exactly where you've been so that you don't fertilize the same spot twice. Well, it may look a little rough in this upstairs bathroom with these cabinets, but once the painter completes his work in sanding, priming, and painting, they'll look great. Also, the cabinet man's in the process of building new drawer fronts and new doors, and he'll be installing new hardware. We've already installed the new cultured marble tops that we'll do throughout the rest of the house as part of this interior renovation.